the edge, feel like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh, I am restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless. Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance. Not the life I want to live, I want to take it all. Standing tall, fear outweighed the person you are. Oh, break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.
Hello everyone. So today we have for review one of my favorite, the MiG-29 Fulcrum A, or the Mikoyan Gurevich. This MiG-29 is in the colors of the Russian Air Force with a board number Red 32 out of the 960th Fighter Regiment. This MiG-29 home station at Primorsko-Akhtarsk Air Base in Russia circa 1997. To give you some backstory of 960th Fighter Regiment, well, basically it's a Russian military unit associated with the MiG-29 Fulcrums. This unit was responsible for training pilots and aircrews on operating the MiG-29s, using tactics in aircraft that simulated Western adversaries. Also, this was a frontline combat unit focused on air-to-air combat tactics, as well as operating on the other aircraft. So, as many of you are aware, that this aircraft has the Russian tricolors on the both of its rudders, the distinctive white, red, and blue colors. Now, some of you may be wondering about these three colors on the both rudders. So they're more than just a decoration. Basically, the vertical white, blue, and red stripes are the colors of the national flag of Russia, which was readapted in 1991 to replace the Soviet-era flag. Also, this aircraft carries the official emblem of the Russian aerobatic team, or better known the Swifts. It is on the side of the fuselage, So why do some of the MiGs have this emblem? Well, these emblems basically signify that this aircraft was previously part of an aerobatic demonstration squadron when the aircraft was not in active combat duty. So the aircraft carries those distinctive markings of its past even if it is no longer serving with the aerobatic team. With all that stated, we'll discuss the various roles this aircraft had in service. So, during the Cold War, the MiG-29 Fulcrum served as the Soviet Union's lightweight, highly agile tactical fighter. Basically, it was a direct response to a new generation of advanced American fighters like the F-15 Eagle and the F-16 Fighting Falcon. Indeed, this aircraft was considered a remarkable piece of engineering at the time. As an agile dogfighter, considered to be the most lethal fighter in a close-range scenarios, basically it was designed to deliver the impressive Cold War performance. This aircraft was designed to be highly lethal in close-range scenarios or dogfights. However, the MiG-29's lethality in the beyond visual range or the BVR is very limited compared to modern Western counterparts, but it can still be dangerous in certain scenarios. So, every aircraft story begins at the start, and that's where we have to go back to. So, the MiG-29 was originally designed by the Mikoyan Bureau. You might wonder where the Mikoyan Gurevich came from. Let's stick around for a second. January 12, 1893, Mikhail Gurevich, the famed Russian aircraft designer, was born. Gurevich eventually partnered with Artem Mikoyan to form the Mikoyan and Gurevich Design Bureau, and that's what they were aiming for. Since we covered that, now let's get back to the main topic. So, in the early 1970s, Mikoyan Gurevich had ambitious plans to launch a project known as the Soviet designation code Izdelye 912, which this code became the identifier for the initial design, which later became the basis for the MiG-29A, which known to NATO as a Fulcrum A. The Izdelye designation translates to protect. This airframe was conceived as a direct challenger to existing Western aircraft in its class. As I've mentioned earlier, in response to the emergence of the fourth generation Western aircraft, the aircraft made its first flight in 1977, basically marked the start of a new era in the Soviet military aviation, entering service with the Soviet Air Force in 1982. Also, this aircraft was initially intended to complement the larger or heavyweight, the Sukhois or the Su-27 flankers in an air defense role. However, its design has enabling it to take on a wide range of missions because of its maneuverability. This aircraft can reach Mach 2.2 or 2.3, and that's a top speed. This aircraft played an influential roles in the Middle East regions, which we will discuss those elements later in the video. Now, before getting ahead of myself here, so the MiG-29 was also designed to meet the specific needs of the Soviet Air Force, including protecting the Soviet Union's air borders from the fourth generation Western fighters. The aircraft was delivered to the operational units from 1982 onwards. A silent feature of this aircraft was its ability to perform rapid interceptions, particularly on strategic routes where rapid detection and reaction were essential. The first MiG-29 equipped units were deployed in key areas such as Eastern Europe and the Soviet border regions, where air patrols were regularly carried out. These patrols often involved maintaining a visible presence in contested airspace, providing a deterrent to possible intrusions by the NATO forces. Specifically, when a foreign aircraft entered or came dangerously close to the Soviet airspace, well, MiG-29s were quickly dispatched to identify the threat without stating their intentions, then escort the aircraft out of the area, or if necessary, intercept it. Also, MiG-29s could detect and track targets up to 70 kilometers away, which enabling them to prepare an effective interception before the intruder could cross the sensitive points. Speaking about the frequent interception exercises during that period, well, basically emphasized the MiG-29's ability to combine speed, maneuverability, and firepower. As an example, during air maneuvers over East Germany, MiG-29 formations practice scenarios simulating attacks against NATO bombers or reconnaissance aircraft. Pilots also trained for close engagements where radar could be supplemented by short-range missiles such as the R-60 or R-73. Well, these missiles were known for their precision and effectiveness in circling combat. These missions also highlighted the MiG-29's endurance and operational reliability. Although the aircraft was not designed for a long patrol missions, however, its rapid deployment and ability to operate from forward and often poorly equipped bases. That being said, the aircraft proved its mobility to operate from austere bases, which made it a central element of the Soviet Union's integrated air defense network. The aircraft thus played a crucial role in a Soviet defense strategy, acting as a first line of defense against potential incursions and reinforcing the security of strategic points in the Eastern Europe and the sensitive border areas. Moving on, after 1991, the MiG-29 was integrated into the armed forces of several countries that emerged from the breakup of the Soviet Union, including Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. The aircraft was also exported to nations in the Middle East, particularly Asia and Africa, and those foreign customers consolidated its role in a local and regional conflicts. With all that said, these operations have enabled to test the aircraft's capabilities in a variety of sometimes highly demanding environments. So, in Eastern Europe, Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29s were used to secure the country's airspace during the period of instability, which was in 1990s. Also, Russia used its MiG-29s not only for air policing missions, but also to maintain a deterrent presence in sensitive border areas. As an example, Russian MiG-29s took part in joint exercises to demonstrate their capabilities against unauthorized incursions and to ensure the air supremacy during the military maneuvers. So, in the Balkans, Yugoslavia put its MiG-29s to test during the Kosovo War, which was in 1999. The Yugoslav Air Force scrambling their MiG-29s to intercept modern NATO fighters such as the F-15, F-16, and Tornadoes. Well, MiG-29 had to engage in combat where they were at a numerical and technological disadvantage. However, despite these difficult conditions, Yugoslav pilots were able to intercept night airstrikes and protect few strategic targets. The MiG-29 thus demonstrated a certain resilience here. Although many aircraft were damaged or destroyed due to lack of spare parts and limited logistical support. Moving on, in the Middle East, nations such as Iran and Syria have integrated the MiG-29 into their fleets to bolster their air defense. Iran, for example, recovered several MiG-29s from Iraq in 1991 after they had been transferred to evade coalition strikes during the Gulf War. These aircraft have since been used to patrol borders and counter air incursions, often under difficult maintenance conditions. So these various post-Cold War operations show that the MiG-29, although designed for a Cold War contest, has found its place in every different military situations. It has thus continued to demonstrate its usefulness as a versatile fighter, capable of adapting to a variety of roles and demanding operational environments, while remaining an asset for those countries that still have them. In the Middle East, the MiG-29 served primarily as an interceptor air defense aircraft, although it was also involved in reconnaissance and tactical support missions. Excuse me, folks. I had to take a little swig here. Anyways, so Iraq under Saddam Hussein was one of the first non-Soviet operators to use the MiG-29 as soon as it was introduced into the Iraqi arsenal. In the late 1980s, the aircraft was integrated into the air defense systems to counter incursions and monitor borders, basically during the Iran-Iraq War, which was from 1980 to 1988. Moving on, during the Gulf War from 1990 to 1991, Iraq used its MiG-29s to defend its airspace from the US-led coalition. Iraqi MiG-29s were mainly deployed around Baghdad and certain strategic sites where they sometimes engaged in aerial duels with the modern fighters such as the American F-15C. However, they were often outclassed by the Western air power, which they were equipped with more powerful radar and missile systems, in addition to suffering degraded maintenance condition due to the international sanctions. And several MiGs were shot down in the early days of the war. Now, let's discuss the modernization of this aircraft. So, over the years, the MiG-29 has been modernized to meet the changing mission requirements. So, the improved variants such as the MiG-29 SMT, which incorporate with more advanced avionics systems, also in a flight refueling capabilities and compatibilities with more modern weaponry. These upgrades have ensured the continued relevance of the aircraft in a variety of operational environments, from reconnaissance to ground attack. So, speaking about the naval variants such as the MiG-29K, further illustrate this adaptability by serving with both the Russian Navy and also on the Indian aircraft carriers. So, to this day, the MiG-29 continues to play an active role in many air forces, although it has been gradually replaced by fifth-generation fighters in some countries. Its reliability, performance, and ability to be modernized still ensure the aircraft to be in a significant place. It remains particularly useful for countries with a limited military budgets, but also in need for a high performance fighter. So I know we've covered a lot, but one last point I'd like to discuss in this timeline. Let's see how this aircraft served in the atrocious war between Russia and Ukraine. The MiG-29 also played a crucial role in the Ukrainian Air Force by preventing Russia air superiority, acting as an integrated air defense systems and harassing Russian ground forces. Despite being outmatched by more modern Russian aircraft, well, Ukrainian pilots putting a lot of effort by using a tactical maneuvering, which is coordinated with the ground-based air defenses and specifically using a Western anti-radar missiles to protect Ukrainian airspace and ultimately disrupt enemy logistics and target Russian air defense systems. However, there were one minor problem. The Ukrainian pilots have struggled with the MiG-29s due to its limited fuel capacity, short range of radar, poor visibility, and overall outdated technology, which is less capable than modern Russian aircraft. The aircraft's cockpit ergonomics are also not an ideal for one-to-one visual combat as a result of its Soviet doctrine. Additionally, pilots face the challenge of intercepting slow-moving threats, for instance like drones, which can be hard to distinguish from the clutter on the radar. And because this aircraft was mainly designed for a short-range scenarios, the MiG-29 is powered by two Klimov RD-33 turbofan engines, which have several design aspects that contributed to high fuel consumption. However, the RD-33s offer excellent acceleration and thrust-to-weight performance, especially with their afterburners engaged. However, pilots in the afterburner mode can burn through their entire fuel load in just minutes. That being said, yeah, it's a pretty thirsty aircraft. Ukrainian pilots must be very precise to avoid running out of fuel because the engines are so fuel intensive. Pilots must use the aircraft precisely, and if the pilots fail to do so, that would put them in the premature fuel exhaustion, which is not a good situation, right? The other thing is that the early models of the RD-33 engines were notorious for emitting heavy black smoke. Well, basically a tail sign of inefficient fuel combustion. So here's why. Soviet engineers at the time prioritized engine reliability over maximum efficiency, opting for a rich fuel mix to prevent engine stalls at a low speeds and altitudes. However, that's not the only reason. So why does the black smokes emit from the MiG-29 aircraft engines? Well, many of the MiG-29 enthusiasts have asked this question. Well, there are several reasons which I will explain here. Other reasons why this black smoke is often seen in the MiG-29s, but not in the fighters of its Sukhoi counterpart. However, not only the MiG-29's fighters, but also like the mighty F-4 Phantom, right? And among other aircraft like the B-52 bombers were emitting large amount of black smoke. So I'd like to voice my opinion on the fact that these engines use relatively poor combustion chamber properties and not completely poor because the older Klimov RD-33 turbofans have been developed since about 1976. They were equipped with a single stage injectors which were not very effective since jet engines do not have the ability to insert a premix and equivalent fuel air mix at a high speeds. The single injection can produce uneven flames fronts, which basically resulting in incomplete combustion and consequently excessive black smokes emits from the exhaust nozzles, and that is why. Now you know. So, turning now to the nations that fly this aircraft, and the variants include the MiG-29A and the B, the export models for many countries, including India, Bulgaria, Bangladesh. Trying to think here for a second. Czechoslovakia, of course, Iraq, Iran, Poland, and North Korea. However, many of those nations that I've mentioned, they became former operators. Most of them transitioned to the fourth and a half generation fighters, or the fifth generation, so to speak. Interestingly, the United States also acquired 21 MiG-29s in 1997 from Moldova after Iran had expressed interest in high performance fighters, for all intended purposes to prevent Iran from obtaining them, which was seen as a potential threat to foreign countries like Israel. The United States believed that Iran was interested in acquiring those MiGs, particularly the MiG-29C variants, which were considered a nuclear capable. However, the United States was little concerned that this would probably destabilize the Middle East. So what they did, they purchased part of the fleet to keep them out of the Iranian hands, preventing the proliferation. Although the initial Iranian acquisition of the MiG-29s from the Soviet Union occurred in 1990, just before the Soviet Union collapsed. As many of you know, Iran has always had a motivation to seek a nuclear capability, while the United States has always prevented it. As we all know, with the recent events, the United States tries to break the spine of the nuclear facilities of Iran, but I digress. Anyway, I think the MiG-29 is a solid fourth generation fighter that provided many nations with a low-cost, effective solution for their air defense, and it approved itself in the skies. While the F-16 was the best dogfighter in the skies at the time, the aircraft had, just like any other aircraft, folks, this aircraft has its strengths and weaknesses, but it ultimately proved its worth. In my opinion, there is no fifth generation aircraft as beautiful as the previous generations, and the MiG-29 is simply one of the best looking ones ever made. I know some of you might disagree. Well, there's always a different perspective, right? Folks, I was inspired by the MiG-29 design from the very young age. Such a beautiful aircraft, and I've always had a deep affection for it. While it doesn't get much public press, unfortunately, this aircraft is one of the more underrated ones out there. Anyway, it ranks as my second favorite fighter right after the F-16. And I remember as a kid, I'd go to the local hobby shop, buy a model kit, and build it. But none of them made it to this day. I wish I still had those old models. I would have definitely shared them with you guys in a video and showing you how I built them. Anywho, folks, there is simply too much to cover about the history of military aviation. I mean, it's just hard to put everything in one video. But I've done my best to fit the key points into this video, and sometimes the duration of these historical videos tends to take a little longer depending on the aircraft history. I try to be as selective as much as possible. However, if I skip a lot, there will be major disinformation out there, and that's just not going to serve the purpose of this channel. So we'll leave that valid topic, and let's talk about the model itself. This is a 1/72nd scale model from Hobbymaster. The model number is HA6520. So Hobbymaster really nailed the paint scheme and overall the shape of the real aircraft. I do like the attributes that Hobbymaster brought to this model, such as the markings insignia, like the tricolors on the both rudders, the designation of the Red 32, the Swift's aerobatic team emblem on the side of the fuselage, basically located on the nose. Also, the Russian big red star, it's on point. The intensity of the two-tone camouflage is dialed in, which is the green and gray. Other stencilings across the fuselage has been precisely captured. Um, Hobbymaster did an excellent job on the cockpit details. I really like it. Also, it comes with the two sets of removable canopies, so you can display the model with either an open or a closed cockpit. In fact, I do like the yellow accent on the canopy. The engine nozzles on the back are well executed. However, it would have been great to see some interior details on the engine nozzles from Hobbymaster that would really elevate the appearance of the model. But anyways, moving on. The rear horizontal stabilizers are static. Uh, just be careful with them. To me, they're kind of flimsy. You know, you could easily break them when you just hold the model. Just be extra careful with them. And I think that's just the nature of design from Hobbymaster on all MiG-29s. The the dorsal antenna on the spine, it comes separately in the box. Really easy to install. Incidentally, you'll get an extra set in case if you end up losing one, which is really nice to see Hobbymaster add extra accessories with the model. Also, it comes with the single pilot figure, of course, pilot in, pilot out, based on the configuration you select. Of course, it comes with a traditional Hobbymaster stand, which this is something I never use. So you can display the model in a flight configuration. Do note, however, if you choose to display this model in a flight posture, you cannot showcase the centerline fuel tank. It's worth noting because I'm not quite sure if this minor thing might be a little concern for some of you out there. It's not a big deal for me, folks, since I don't use it anyway. Moving on, in terms of armament, you'll get 6 missiles in total, basically 2 R-27 Alamo medium range air-to-air missiles per wing, and 4 R-60, which is a short range air-to-air missiles, and the single extra fuel tank mounted on the centerline pylon. So, giving all aspects, Hobbymaster has truly nailed the shape and proportions of the MiG-29. In fact, one of the minor details that Hobbymaster captured so well is the enhedral. So the MiG-29s has wings with an enhedral downward angle, which can be described as the being canted downwards, and I believe it's 6 degrees. And I'm glad that Hobbymaster has replicated. It is a small detail, but I love it. Unlike other manufacturers, such as JC Wings, which consistently fails to capture those accurate details. Not to mention, they also have a persistent issues with the fitment of their accessories. I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way to the JC fanboys. That's just my own perspective here. But I'm curious to hear from JC fans. What has your experience been with the JC Wings models? Have you run into a frequent or major issues? Because I'm trying to gauge how widespread my problems are. But anyway, I'm glad to report that Hobbymaster has done a really good job with the accessories. I did not encounter any major problems with this model. One note, please be extra careful with the landing gear door panel. It has a taxi light in it, and it's a tiny and really easy to break, very fragile. And that just be careful with that. Other notable interior details is present in the air intakes, where the compressor blade is visible as a uh, part of the ramp as well. It's showing. It would have been nice to see an extra details on the air intakes, but I think it's good for what it is. The other thing I'd like to point out is the upper air intakes are permanently closed on this model and cannot be opened or adjusted by the user. And I believe this is a standard across all MiG-29s from Hobbymaster. So because of the MiG-29s has auxiliary upper air intakes located on the top of the wings, which are the key feature of its design to operate from rough airfields. These air intakes are used when the main lower intakes are closed to prevent foreign object debris like dirt and stones, etc., from being ingested, basically during ground operations. That being stated, so this aircraft can take off with a lower air intakes fully closed. Folks, it's impressive to know that this technology has been used for more than 50 years. Yeah, it's an old school Russian engineering, and honestly, it holds up remarkably well against modern standards. But anyway, back to the model subject. Other details, such as the infrared research tracking sensor, the little glass ball on the nose, has been rendered on this model. So this model is a real beauty. You should definitely get it. Folks, I love MiG fighters in particular. And in my opinion, the MiG-29 simply one of the best looking fourth generations out there. It's sad to share an aircraft with a long service history that often gets overlooked in the media. And the timeline of the Cold War aviation, this aircraft was a benchmark for aerial performance. However, until the F-15's introduction changed the balance of power, so when the F-15 took over the skies, basically this airframe became, shall we say, obsolete. So it's time to wrap things up. If you watched to the end, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you want to be a part of this community and help the channel grow, please subscribe. Basically, it tells me that I'm doing a good work and encourages me to produce more content. Also, a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Stay vigilant, Patriots sign off, and we'll catch you in the next video.